All right, sports fans, how's everybody out there doing? William Martin coming at you one more time here on YouTube with another edition of the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge Podcast. It's March, which means that it's time for the Big East tournament once again at the world's most famous arena, Madison Square Garden in New York City. Now, the Big East, out of their 11 teams, they look like they're going to be getting five bids for the NCAA tournament next week, barring something unforeseen. But with that said, what can we expect this week at the Garden when the Big East tournament starts on Wednesday? Now, one thing I want to talk about, the six seed Villanova Wildcats. Do they have a run in them? And I say this because, it has not been the typical year for Villanova that we've been accustomed to for about the last 10 years or so. They struggled to get their footing at times, especially at the beginning under new head coach Kyle Neptune, but they came on strong towards the end of the season. They had more games at home, and the Wildcats were able to take advantage of that. Now, with that said, Villanova, they're entering this tournament as a number six seed. They're going to get Georgetown Wednesday night at the Garden. That's a game that most people do expect Villanova to win. They will be heavily favored in that meeting. And if the Wildcats were to get past Georgetown, they would then have to deal with Creighton on Thursday night. I'll tell you like this: Villanova is going to be an interesting team in here. I'm not saying that the Wildcats are going to once again cut down the nets at MSG. No, but this is a veteran team. This was a Final Four team last year, and they have a lot of those guys back, and they know what it takes to get it done in March. So you cannot overlook them. And they're going to be facing a Creighton team potentially in the Big East quarters that they split with during the regular season. But then you've got that big guy in the middle for the Creighton Blue Jays, and I'm talking about Ryan Kalkbrenner, the Big East Defensive Player of the Year. And if he stays out of foul trouble and he can roam the middle, look out because Villanova is going to have a problem and anybody else that Creighton would potentially face in this tournament as well. Now, for the seven-seeded Seton Hall Pirates, can they find a way to make a run in this tournament and crack the NCAA tournament field of 68? We got to wait and see. But the Pirates head coach Shaheen Holloway, he knows a thing or two about March. Of course, he played for Seton Hall, and of course, he was part of that team in 2000 that upset Temple in the second round and got to the Sweet 16 and gave Florida all that they could handle. But nonetheless, you think back to the most recent part of Shaheen Holloway's time in the NCAA tournament last year as a head coach at St. Peter's, where the 15 seed, they became the first 15 seed to do it. They got all the way to the Elite Eight. And then, of course, he came back to his alma mater at Seton Hall. But nonetheless, the Pirates will draw DePaul in the first round in the 7-10 game. And if Seton Hall were able to get past the Blue Demons, they would take on a very tough Xavier team, a Xavier team that swept the regular season series. So Seton Hall is definitely going to have their work cut out for them. And speaking of teams that have their work cut out for them, the home team, if you will, the eighth seeded St. John's Red Storm. Now, of course, the Johnnies breezed through their non-conference portion of their schedule. It was on the easy side. And unfortunately for their sake, they had a reality check waiting for them when Big East play began. St. John's enters this tournament as an eight seed. They will take on ninth seeded Butler on Wednesday afternoon. And if the Johnnies can find a way to get past a very tough Butler team, they have to take on Marquette, the top seed in this tournament in the Big East quarters on Thursday afternoon. Now, if you're St. John's and you face Marquette, you know that you just went to Milwaukee Saturday and you only lost by two to Marquette. They were up early and St. John's came back. And at the end of that game, St. John's actually did have an opportunity to win that contest, but they fell short. So if you're Mike Anderson and company, you definitely will have some confidence when you take the floor or if you take the floor Thursday afternoon versus Marquette, if you're able to get past Butler in round number one. Now, any one of the top five teams in this tournament, I really feel can win. We already know one quarterfinal matchup is set and the 4-5 game between UConn and Providence. UConn has been playing some very good ball coming down the stretch. They've won their last 5 games in a row. Providence, not so much. They've lost their last 2 games, which included a 24-point loss at home to wrap up the regular season. Marquette comes in riding a 6-game winning streak. And for Shaka Smart and company, if they can find a way to run the table here in the Big East tournament, we might be talking about a potential 2 seed for Marquette in the Big Dance, the NCAA tournament. Now you look at Xavier and Sean Miller. This is his time of the year. Sean Miller, I know he's still hasn't gotten that Final Four appearance on his resume yet. But you know what? He always tends to find a way to have good basketball teams in March. And you look at the Xavier Musketeers, they could be a very dangerous team in this tournament as well. Now, on the downside of things at the Big East tournament, it would be unfortunate if it happens. Will Patrick Ewing be coaching his last game at Georgetown? And of course, the big fella has meant so much to Georgetown basketball as a player. And you think about it, he helped with the late John Thompson II to put Georgetown basketball really on the map and the Big East for that matter in the 1980s. You think about the Big East tournament and the origins of it at Madison Square Garden, and Patrick Ewing is one of the names that definitely is the first to come to mind. And then, of course, aside from Patrick Ewing playing in the Big East tournament at the Garden, being the foe of St. John's in those glory days of the Big East at the Garden, and then, of course, spending the bulk of his career in New York with the Knicks. And of course, they play their home games at MSG. It's a possibility. It's not a guarantee. But it's one of those where if this was to be it for Patrick Ewing, you know, even though it would end on a sour note, things to me, I think at least would somewhat come full circle if it happened in Madison Square Garden, with so many memories there with him, especially with his jersey being up in the rafters, representing the Knicks at the Mecca. So when it's all said and done, you ask yourself who has the edge in this tournament. And for me, again, it's a toss up. I really do feel between the top 5 teams. I think all of them are capable of winning it. Providence has not been playing their best ball coming into this tournament. That could be a factor right there. I look at Marquette and UConn, who are playing some great ball, and potential meetings in the semis, potential meeting between Marquette and UConn, a potential meeting between Xavier and Creighton in the semis if the seeding holds serve. But when it's all said and done, I just think that Xavier has enough to win this tournament. The Musketeers are playing some good ball right now for head coach Sean Miller. And that's one thing about this Big East conference basketball wise. They've really gotten back to their roots since they split, with the football schools. And of course, the wheels were set in motion when the likes of Syracuse and Pitt decided to leave more than 10 years ago and join the ACC. But then, just getting back to the basketball roots. And with that said, you have some good basketball programs in this conference, and you have some good basketball coaches up and down this roster. You think about Shaka Smart and Marquette, Sean Miller at Xavier. You think about Greg McDermott at Creighton, Danny Hurley at UConn, Ed Cooley at Providence, Kyle Neptune, I think, is going to do some good things at Villanova. I think the same can be said for Shaheen Holloway at Seton Hall, and the same could be said for Mike Anderson at St. John's. Thad Matta's getting it back at Butler. Of course, he had a start there once upon a time. And, it's just one of those where this conference is just littered with good coaches. And I think that's going to be on display this week at the Garden, as well as the talent and the programs that we have seen throughout the year. They get one more crack at their conference foes before they get ready for the likes of the NCAA tournament. For some teams, the NIT, and also possibly the CBI. But when it's all said and done, I think we are in store for a tremendous Big East tournament this week at the world's most famous arena. So, folks, that is going to wrap it up. And as always, I want to take this time out to thank you for tuning into the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. I want to take this time out to thank all of you fine folks out there for tuning in. And if you have not already, please feel free to subscribe to this channel. Now, if you're on Twitter, please feel free to follow me at 300 Pounds of Sports. And like I always say, if you follow me, it'll be my pleasure to follow you right back. There's also the sports discussion group on Facebook at the Sports Depot 365. You can check it out. Drop a line and be a part of one of the better sports debating sites going on social media. So, once again, fine folks, my name is William Martin. I am signing off, saying take care and have yourselves a wonderful day.